Boom, shakalaka boom. You're tuned in to the Free Range Human Show of Choice, your daily dose of reality radio. This is the Clay Edwards Show. I'm, of course, Clay Edwards, coming at you live on 103.9 FM, a WYAB, streaming worldwide and live in stunning 4K cinematic quality video at Save JXN on Facebook, X, YouTube, and Rumble. A man came close to not having the live stream this morning. Got here and the cameras was doing something wonky and wouldn't work. But because our Lord and Savior decided that this show was so important today, he graced us with a little wave of the magic wand and poof, restart Google Chrome and look at there, cameras work. Let's jump straight into it. The Guns and Gear text line, 769-241-1944. 769-241-1944. Mazda of Jackson phone line, 601-879-0002. We're going to have a slobber knocker this morning. The first, I got a guest coming up here about 7:30, Hollie Jeffery. She's been on the show before. We're going to talk about human trafficking and some of the crazy stuff going on right here in Mississippi with that school bus driver / pastor that was making those two 14-year-old kids do unspeakable things on the bus. We're going to talk about some other stuff. But first, I've been biting my tongue somewhat for the last 36 hours or so. I want to talk about the St. Paddy's Day massacre. And make no mistake, it was a massacre. I think my understanding is 7 people total were shot. 1 murdered, another one seriously injured, as some little YBs. I can't say the word that I can't. They call them YNs amongst themselves. I'm guessing that we're not allowed to abbreviate that, so we'll call them YBs. Decided to open fire on a group of people in what also appeared to be a targeted attack against one particular individual. We're going to tell you about that individual as well and why he may have been targeted. We've got some information that I don't think any other news source here locally has put together yet, thanks to our crack team of Save JXN and Clay Edwards Show reporters, internet sleuths that, frankly, are just better than just about any investigative reporters in the state. And that's not a knock at the investigative reporters. That's just saying that our guys are really damn good at what they do. And they're the people who like to remain in the shadows. And they pass me good information that makes me look way smarter than I am. So shout out to those guys and girls that take the time to put all this stuff together. So this is the second parade in the last 3 years that there was murder. And y'all say, Clay, it ain't the parade. Clay, it's not the parade. It was the after parties. That is semantics, and that is just what you're telling yourself to feel better about it. The parades are a bigger part. The after parties are a bigger part of that parade as the parade itself. So it is what it is. You don't have the after parties without the parade. If people doing shooting and getting shot and running around ducking and dodging for their life or wearing green shirts and beads, it's part of the parade. Again, semantics. Now, it's clear and obvious where this stuff happens at, which bars it seemed to happen in front of. It seems to repeatedly happen in front of 4th Avenue. That's where all of this nonsense happened at. Now, is that 4th Avenue's fault directly? No, indirectly. You lay down with you lay down with in mud. What's the old saying? You lay with dogs, you get ticks. Same concept. They've turned that thing from like a nice little ultra lounge into a nightclub, and you lay with dogs, you get ticks. I've been there. I got into many ticks over the years laying down with dogs in the nightclub business. When we changed up the crowd we pander to and everything. So I get it. Is it time to, maybe consider putting 4th Avenue on the nuisance list? I've been getting a lot of videos of fights out there and everything. It's just disgusting. But hey, that's just my opinion. That is not material fact. But I can see the background in the videos and see where it's at. You know where there isn't any trouble up there around Hallowmals and Martins. They seem to have that well under control. But you get down Pearl Street, Capitol Street, Lamar, in that area, Pascagoula, that's where there seems to be a lot of problems around here. Now, I went last year for the first time in 10 years. And I stayed inside the what I call the Martins bubble, the block party bubble up there. But no way I was getting out amongst the crazies on the streets. And I had all kind of videos of people doing dumb stuff. But, look, fighting's fighting. That's not a race thing. When we were younger, we went down there. We did our fair share of fighting. You mix day drinking and people and lots of people, you're going to have fights. Look, if you think you're not going to have fights, you're crazy, especially in a big day drinking event. I mean, this is the St. Paddy's Parade is a expert level day drinking venture. And the problem is you get too many rookies out there trying to expert level day drink. They don't understand eating breakfast. They don't understand pacing themselves. They don't understand mixing in a little water. I got a routine, but I ain't going to give y'all my routine. I might make a video one day about it on how to professionally day drink. And even somebody like me with my pedigree can still overdo it sometimes. I think by 7 o'clock last year, it was a wrap for your boy. Put a bow on it, put me in an Uber, send me home. And that is exactly what happened. Shout out to Jason, my Uber driver. But I've been going since 7 o'clock that morning. Again, professional, expert level day drinker. I don't know if that's something to brag about or not. Probably not at 47 years old. Probably shouldn't be bragging about day drinking. But it's the parade, right? It's that one time of the year. This is our Mardi Gras. Anyway, you mix all that together. You mix testosterone, or frankly, lack of testosterone, a bunch of feminine males that would rather shoot than fight. That's really what it is, isn't it? Because you look at a lot of these little guys, a little skinny, scrawny, low T, just no men in their lives, no positive role models in their lives. You look back at the Jordan Cummins guy from 2 years ago, allegedly beating up on his girl, little low testosterone looking, scrawny, methed out, allegedly chump, Killed the two black folks, the girl and the guy. Last year, you didn't have any violence. You had some fights and stuff. You had all the hood rats took over a fire truck, started twerking on it and everything. But, that's kind of funny, just to be honest. Trashy, but funny. And then this year, you have another murder. And there's all kind of videos floating around out there. One of them, you can see the dead guy in the video in the background. I posted it and didn't realize that was the situation. I didn't take it down. It's still there. You can watch it and screenshot it. But that was from somebody else's Facebook Live. So it was already on the internet. I didn't put it there exclusively. So, you've got a culture problem in Jackson. And I don't care which race it is. Because we can go back 2 years ago and it was a white guy. This year it's a black guy. You have a culture problem. Severe culture problem. Because people just know they can come to Jackson and break the damn law and get away with whatever they want. They ain't caught the guy that did it yet. Now, here's something interesting. The kid that got shot and killed was involved, as long as, I can't fathom this not being the same guy. Let me pull my information up here. This guy was involved in, he was accused and then later the charges were dropped. But moral to the story, he was running with the crowd that got involved in doing what I'm about to tell you. Therefore, he's tied up in a life of crime with a bunch of thugs that he shouldn't have been around. Now, I hear that I hear his mom is a really good person, and she's done all she can. And to her, I'm sincere condolences, and I really want to try to handle this a little differently than I normally do, and try to have a little bit of sympathy and empathy. So I'm going to try to do that instead of just going straight into effed around and found out. But the kid that got killed, his name was Cortez Jerome George. Now, that name may sound familiar to y'all. You may remember, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. Let's see here. I got the date right here. June 17th of 2024. Not even a year ago. There was, I refer to it as GTA Jackson. Grand Theft Auto Jackson, North State Street edition. Where they did a rolling drive-by. Like two cars going down the road shooting back and forth at each other. Of course, neither person in either one of those cars got shot and killed, but an innocent guy driving his vehicle down the road did. And then he wrecked his vehicle into the building and died. Not sure if the gunshot got him or the trauma from the wreck. A local DJ, his name eludes me. I don't think they got his name in this story here. Anthony Davis have been arrested for the murder of 23-year-old Anthony Davis. That was the guy's name that got killed. So they did have his name there. All right. So the charges were later dropped because of lack of evidence on this kid. So I think that's very important. I am still a innocent till proven guilty guy. But nonetheless, he was a suspect for a reason. Because he's running with the wrong folks. Now, I don't know about the other guys in the group. I don't know how to find out if their case has moved forward. Been less than a year. That seems like breakneck pace for anything to get done in Hinds County. I'll have to confirm the status of them. But that's the kid that got killed in what appears to be a targeted attack. Somebody said somebody with a black mask, wore an all black hoodie, all that, rolled right up, shot the guy, and then shooting broke out, and all hell breaks loose. Now, I'm going to layer that with a layer of allegedly, because these are scattered eyewitness reports, and I just frankly have not had the time to reach out to all my sources within local law enforcement to get all the details together. I had a ball tournament all weekend. Boy, my life has changed. I spent all weekend at a baseball tournament. How fun was that too, by the way? Just complete change of subject here. Man, my daughter didn't play sports. So I didn't, she didn't do softball and all that. My sister did for years. So it's been a long, long time since I spent a weekend down at a baseball field. I had so much fun. It was so nice to just shut it all off and watch them kids play tournament ball. So fun. I have found me a new passion. And I did not see this one coming. But I really enjoyed that. But I digress. Even if this kid wasn't involved in that GTA Jackson incident, running with the wrong folks, we talk about it a lot on this show, man. I mean, I did it a lot growing up, and then there's times that I was the wrong folks and people were running with. People talked about me just like I'm talking about them. I was them ticks at a time in my life. I've laid with them and picked them up, and I've been the damn tick. And there's a point where you had to say, I don't want to do this no more. I went back and watched a video of myself from a few months ago that somebody had commented on, and it was explaining kind of why a lot of the black folks in Jackson don't like me anymore. And it's because, and I made a Facebook post about this yesterday, it's not because I'm a racist. That's the easy argument for them. You just call somebody a racist, as they've been doing it for years, and it's supposed to discredit whatever they say because black person said racist, and everybody's just supposed to shut up and believe it. Well, we don't anymore. It doesn't work, y'all. Y'all went to the well one too many times claiming racism when there's no racism involved, because you know what? Facts can't be racist, and the fact is there's a culture rot problem in Jackson, Mississippi that you can no longer mask, hide, and disguise. But they're mad at me because I had a front row seat to it. I was a purveyor of chaos. I helped rot that culture. I was invited to the barbecue, as I like to say. I rescinded my invitation because I am the damn barbecue. I don't have to go to nobody else's. They're mad at me because I know how the sausage is made. And I know that all of the problems in that community are 100% self-inflicted and can only be blamed on the people in that community. We got to take a break real quick. We'll be right back. This is the Clay Edwards Show. Wherever you're watching this, listening to this, hit share, tag a friend, tell them, come on down, young son. We got a barn burner this morning on WYAB. Welcome back in to the Clay Edwards Show here on a Monday morning on WYAB. We're streaming worldwide at WYAB.com, as well as the TuneIn app and Alexa, and also in 4K video at Save JXN on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Rumble. I always have to edit this. The Rumble is actually at Clay Edwards Show. There is a Save JXN Rumble. I think you can get to it from there, but just type in Clay Edwards Show if you're on Rumble, and you should take you right there. It ain't rocket science. Come on, guys. Help me out. Help me out a little bit. All right, this segment is going to be brought to you by our friends over at Stonington Farm grass-fed beef. I had a good conversation with a fellow about this weekend. We were talking about deer burgers and stuff, and I was trying to turn him on to a little Stonington Farms and just explaining how good that dang hamburger meat is. And, guys, you can experience that as well. They should be coming back up here in the next week or so. Of course, you can always just get it shipped to you, but you can save the shipping by meeting them when they come up here. Imagine it's not cheap to get a cooler full of meat sent with dry ice and all that. So, hey, either way, it's worth it when you want it. 100% grass-fed, 100% grass-finished, mRNA-free, antibiotic-free, and steroid-free, Mississippi-raised, grass-fed, and grass-finished beef. That's right. A lot of things can be grass-fed. Everything's not grass-finished, and that is where, to use my analogy a little earlier, that is where the sausage is made, is to get to the premium sausage. All right, terrible analogy. Anyway, you want it grass-fed and grass-finished if you're going to eat grass-fed beef. Stonington Farm, they got you covered. They got beef tallow, however you say it. One day I'll get it right. They have that available now, too, which has become oh so popular as a cooking oil. And I use fat and bacon fat, and I have now added some beef tallow to my repertoire. It's really great with eggs. If you like to fry eggs or do just any kind of eggs in a skillet, put a scoop of that in there. Dang, it's a game changer. So they got that, too. They got bone broth and every imaginable cut of red meat that you can want. That's StoningtonFarm.com. Stonington with 2 N's, farm.com. All right. You may see this lovely lady sitting across from me if you're watching online. We're going to pivot here from the St. Paddy's Day stuff. I just wanted to get that off my chest. I will be leading efforts moving forward to try to get a parade somewhere else. Maybe not move that one, but I think it's time for a second option outside the city of Jackson. And I'm going to be having my first meeting with somebody about that this week. And it's time for folks who want to act right and be safe to have somewhere to act right and be safe at. And we're gonna try to lead that charge. So stay tuned. If something can happen, you'll be the first to know. All right, we got Miss Hollie Jeffery here in the studio with me. Y'all may recognize Hollie. She's been on the show at least once before. Yeah. Oh, sorry, mic's off. Yeah, at least once before. I can't remember if you've been on with Allison too, but you've been on with Allison and then did my show. That's right. And she just leads the charge. She's a huge advocate for in the human trafficking, child sex trafficking. Well, not advocate for it, advocate against it, obviously. She's out there doing all she can to help bring attention to these things. And there's a story popped up that just, I'll be honest, I didn't initially read the story. I just saw the headline, and I was like, that's really all I need to see. But then something piqued my interest. I got back on WLBT, and the story wasn't going away from the front page. I was like, all right, let me see here what's going on. And by the time I got to the end of this story, I was just, rarely does my jaw drop. And my jaw was down in my lap. And we called an Uber Saturday, because we didn't go to the parade, but we'd gone to a ball tournament, and then we wanted to go out that evening and knew that, we drink and we ain't driving. So we called an Uber, and the guy that was our Uber driver was a retired school bus driver. It just kind of came up in conversation. So I brought this story up, and he was so disgusted. He was familiar with it too. And he had 20-something year veteran of driving school buses. And I said, man, from what I read, we need more guys like you still doing this. And he was like, I was just so sick when I read it. And I'll just tell you, if you got kids in the car, you got about 5 seconds, because we're going to get into some sexually explicit stuff here. That I don't know. I just don't want to surprise y'all with it. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There was a school bus driver down in Jefferson County. Mm-hmm. Is it Jefferson or Jefferson Davis? Is there a Jefferson?
Well, now that you say that, I don't know.
South Mississippi.
I'll look it up on my Facebook page.
Down there in South Mississippi, there was a school bus driver who's also a pastor, and clearly a sicko. And this guy was, I can't believe these words are about to come out of my mouth on the radio. This guy was making this 14-year-old girl and this 14-year-old boy have sex on the bus for his personal pleasure. And we gather it was hundreds of times maybe. Mm-hmm. And here's the crazy part of this story. The male was not even a bus rider.
Right.
So he was dropping everybody else off. And he was picking this boy up somewhere along the lines. And after they had dropped everybody off, they would go wherever, and he would make these two kids have sex. I mean, and at some point, the girl finally says something to an adult. And that's where this story picks up, I reckon. Have you heard anything else about all this?
I've not heard anything else on this one. It says right here that she told law enforcement that this happened roughly 20 times. This is according to the LBT.
Pull that mic closer.
According to the LBT
article.
Yeah.
20
yeah. And that she was, of course, extremely devastated, and it is Jefferson County,
Jefferson County, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he's a pastor and a school bus driver. And
it checks off every box you would want for a responsible adult.
Right.
You know, if you were just sitting there saying, oh, man, he's a pastor.
Right.
He's a bus driver. This guy's doing the Lord's work.
Right.
Well, you know, if my kid's safe around anybody, he's safe around that.
Well, I teach the child abuse courses at the Mississippi Law Enforcement Officers Training Academy. And one of the presentations that I do out there is called Praying in the Pews, Preying, not fold my hands and pray in the pews, but predators praying in the pews. And the reason that I call it that is because most of these predators work very hard to blend in with normal society. And so they embed themselves into schools, into churches, into community events and community organizations and politics. And they're elected officials. They're the pastors at your churches. They're the youth directors. And it's because they want access to as many children as possible. And the research that's been done on these predators is they're like in his situation, he got caught and there are 2 victims, right? And so he may eventually plea to these 2 victims. But unless law enforcement digs much more thoroughly, they may not ever find all the other victims. But he didn't just wake up a couple of years ago as a 50, 60-something-year-old man and decide to make these 2 young children have sex with each other. Research shows that these predators start in their teenage years, as early, in some cases, as early as 10 years old, preying on other kids. And they grow up looking for as many victims as they possibly can. So depending on the research article that you read, they have on average between 175 and 350 victims each over a lifetime. You don't get that number of victims within just your family. So you have to put yourself in situations where there's going to be children. So that's church youth groups, that is sports, that is daycare centers, schools, all the places where children are. And so they're going to be in those places. And we're not just going to let anybody around our children. So they're going to do really a lot of work to try to look normal, act normal, be normal, and they're going to go above and beyond the normal average guy because they want to be seen as the best, the greatest, stay under the radar, but stay in people's high favor. And then they're going to choose children that nobody will believe, so that when the children make an outcry, nobody's going to believe that child, because this is such a
good stature citizen over here.
Exactly.
Sean and I did a show. Well, it wasn't a show about it, but we stumbled into this topic the other day on the show about 2 weeks ago, about the time that when we lined this up. And I really upset some people, but I said there's a stereotype. I mean, there's a profile that it just about fits every time I see one of these praying in the pews type situations pop off. And I know it ain't, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not everybody, but a lot of times it's an overweight, middle-aged guy.
White guy.
Middle-aged white guy. This bus driver wasn't. This bus driver was black. But it's usually a middle-aged, overweight white guy, never had a girlfriend, still lives with his single mother, and is involved with the church choir and or youth groups.
There was a research article. There's an expert that's done tons of research.
They all look like Peter Griffin from, not to make it funny, but to me they look like Peter Griffin from Family Guy.
Well,
to paint the image for people out there.
Right. Well, I don't want to paint the image, because if that's the only image they're looking for, they're going to miss all the others.
True enough.
And so here's what Abel found. Abel is a researcher that's been researching them for decades. So he wanted to see how they blend in with regular society, right? So he took about 5,000 non-sex offenders. He took about 5,000 admitted sex offenders. And then he took about 5,000 who've been convicted of sex offending, but they minimize what they did. And he compared all three groups. And so he wanted to see if the offenders in demographics match the non-offending groups. And so he found that the non-offending groups, let me see if I can find the research, because I want to get it right, and I want to paint this picture for people.
I'll tell you what, while you're doing that, let's take our first break here with Hollie. We're discussing, Hollie, what would you say today's topic is? We always say human trafficking and
sexual predators.
Sexual predators today. I just want to make sure we get it right, because, there's some stuff with the human trafficking I think is blown out of proportion for funding from federal government and stuff. And, that's why I have people on like Hollie, because she reminds me this stuff is real. It is happening. And here's are the true things to look out for, not the white string on the door handle at Walmart myths of the world.
And it's so much more than human trafficking. There's online sexual exploitation. There's your local guy that's doing it. There's sextortion. And, I'm just here to warn people that the problem with sexual predators who are preying after children is so much worse than you think that it is. And you're afraid of the man in the white van at Target, and you give your child a phone, and it's not the man in the white van at Target. It's every perpetrator on your child's phone, and you're letting them into your house every night. And so it just blows my mind how much access we allow our children have to the rest of the world through the devices that we give them. And so I just want people to know these predators are real. They blend into the community. I'll give you some of this research when we come back from the break, but it's so much more than sex trafficking for sure.
All right, we'll be right back on WYAB. Again to the Clay Edwards Show. Guys, a lot of storms came through last night. Watkins Construction and Roofing should be your phone call this morning, or your online inquiry if you've possibly took any damage, if you think you took any damage. I mean, I know it got really rough south of Brandon, down into the Braxton area, all through there, some other parts. But, I mean, it came through overnight, man. Heck, in Brandon, too. I mean, it woke me up at 3 o'clock this morning. That thunder hit so hard it about knocked me out of the bed. I was like, what in the world happened? And I look over there, and my partner is laying in the bed watching her phone, watching the weather. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, weather, tornado warnings right now. I was like, oh, no. But look, but it's hail season. It's storm season. I watched that I don't know why I did it to myself. I hate bad weather. But I watched that documentary on Netflix last night, the Twister about the Joplin tornado.
Oh, gosh.
And then I'll be dang if next thing you know, we don't have tornado watches and warnings popping up on the phone. I'm like, really? Why did I do this to myself? But, look, guys, long story short, it's the spring in Mississippi. It's that time of year. If you take on any damage, or you think you do, get in touch with Watkins Construction and Roofing. They're going to come out and do an honest, complimentary assessment. You may not need a whole roof replaced. You may just need a section repaired. They got you covered. Their new website is nomoreroofleak.com, nomoreroofleak.com, or just Google Watkins Construction and Roofing if you can't remember all that, or text me. I'll remind you. Check them out, Watkins Construction and Roofing, complimentary roof assessment after storm damage or any other time. All right, so Holly wants me to ask you guys a question before we dive into what the statistics say a predator looks like. And she wants to know, if you're watching online in the comments or on the text machine, what do you think, listeners, what do you think a sexual predator looks like?
What do they look like? What are their characteristics? What do they do for a living? Like, of course, I've already talked a little bit about this, but if you were to envision a sexual predator, I asked this question too of, like, when you think of a sex trafficker, what do you think a sex trafficker looks like? And years ago, people thought black guy, gold teeth, pimp, fur, the pimp hat, the pimp clothes. And so, we need to have really serious conversations about, what is it or who is it? Are you afraid of your children being around? Like, in your mind's eye, who are these predators and what do they look like? So put those in the comments and in the chats, and we'll read those in just a second.
And the text line, the Guns of Gear text line is 769-241-1944. 769-241-1944. So we got one answer here. This is from just a minute ago. It says, this profile is so on point. I know an individual, white male, who is very much involved in church settings and also a music teacher in a local school district. He and his wife also took in foster boys that he abused in the home. At least 2 victims across 2 different school systems in the area came forward, and this individual is now in prison. This man was involved in church ministry and knew scripture very well and played the part. The person is very sick, and he deserves anything he gets in prison or the afterlife.
Oh, yeah. I have no sympathy for these guys at all. And women, because there's a lot. There's one statistic that I'll talk about before we get some of the answers. In Abel's research that he did, and let me see if it gives me this study was done in 2000, so this is 25 years old. And some of this research may have changed with some of the culture shift. You don't see quite as many people getting married these days, and there's a lot more online sexual exploitation. But back then, he was saying that gender-wise, 99% of sexual predators were male. And I think that number may be slightly skewed, and that's because you don't see as many victims coming forward who have female offenders. There's just, like, it never fails. Anytime I bring this up, especially in a group of men, and I'm teaching this and there's a large group of men, there are multiple men in the group that will say, when I was 14 years old, I had sex with a 29-year-old girl.
Well, there was that Iowa school teacher, I think it was Iowa, last week, who made the 14-year-old boys put on the scream mask, like an orgy with 3 14 or 15-year-olds. She made them wear the scream mask from the movie. Yeah. And she says the worst mistake she ever made was losing weight. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted becoming attractive enough for young men to want to have sex with her.
And so, I'll have a group of 25 men in my training class, and at least 5 or 6 of them will say, when I was in my teens, I had sex with women that were 25 years old and older, and they don't see it as sexual abuse.
We still don't.
And
I'm just speaking from a 47-year-old man's, and I know I'm wrong on this. Let me put that out there. I know I'm in the wrong, but I'm staying as a guy and putting myself back in 16, 17-year-old Clay's point of view. If a 25-year-old, 30-year-old, hot teacher, hot, female, anywhere in the plethora in my life,
Right.
wanted to have had sex, Clay would have been having sex with that hot, and it'd been like, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, you see that one comment all the time, and I don't mean to cut you off,
Yeah,
but you always
go
see that comment under these stories where it says, looks like I went to the wrong school.
Right.
You
Right.
know? 'Cause we view it differently when it's the boy, like the boy on the school bus, the 14-year-old boy who was having sex with a girl. Nobody feels sorry for him. Well, let me say that's incorrect.
He's not so much listed as a victim as much as the girl is.
Yeah, exactly. Like people just look at him differently because I'm gonna be a little explicit here. Guys have to get erect. You know what I mean? And usually, if you get erect, it's because you want to have sex. You know, and I know the human body, you know, things happen and whatnot, and that can happen either way. But that's how guys are treated. That's why I think people look at the guys differently, because if they're able to get erect, they must want to do it.
Right.
So they're not considered the victim.
And what I try to do is put the guys and the males in the room in the shoes of the 30-year-old female, the 35-year-old female having sex with a 14-year-old boy. Speaking as a grown woman, there is nothing that a 14-year-old boy can offer me.
Sure.
Do you understand that?
And when you say it like that, too, it immediately gets gross.
It's incredibly gross. Like, what is wrong with her that she has to go to a 14-year-old to satisfy herself and not a grown man? So when you put yourself in the shoes of that woman, you start seeing her as the predator she is.
Yep.
And she is preying on vulnerable boys who see this as something that's fun and exciting when it's not.
Rite of passage.
Yeah. She's sick.
Yeah.
There's something wrong.
I'm losing my virginity to my teacher. It's like something out of a movie. Because we've normalized it to where people think it's something out of a movie.
When she is a very sick monster, taking like there is nothing that a young kid or even a young man in their early 20s could offer me as a mature, grown adult woman. What can he offer me?
Hold that thought. We got to take a break. Radio audience, don't go nowhere. Online audience, we're going to reply to some of your comments here during this break because we've got our weird top of the hour break here. So it's going to be a little long run of commercials, but don't go anywhere. We got a great show this morning with Hollie Jeffries on WYAB. We're going to stay live online.
What?
Take your headphones off. We're going to stay live online through this break, but if you put the headphones on, all you'll hear is the commercials for some reason. All right, internet audience, thank y'all. I didn't want to leave y'all hanging with no noise for 7 or 8 minutes, so we're going to do a little special section here for just you all. Yes, I want to circle back to this. We'll just kind of pick up where we left off there.
Yeah.
The women doing that. You know, I haven't necessarily looked at it from that perspective of, and it's like, you know, what's so weird to me too, and just always, but the ones that make the media are usually really attractive women that should have had no problem bagging somebody their own age.
Right. But think about
Which
yourself,
tells you
Clay.
there's
How old are
something
you?
not right.
How old are you?
47.
Do you find 14-year-old girls attractive to the point where you want to have sex with
Not
them?
only do I not, me and an ex had this conversation not too long ago, last year. Maybe it was after one of the times you've been on the show, actually. And she made it a point. She was like, one of the reasons that I like you is because I know you're not attracted to young women. She was like, having a 22 and a 25-year-old daughter has this weird effect on me too. It's like there's just always this line of demarcation that changes as they get older.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, no.
Yeah.
They're going to be like 30. I'm like, no, 30-year-olds.
They're emotionally immature. They're sexually immature. They're gullible. That, like, you can, as a grown adult person, you can manipulate and take advantage of them and overpower them, and you're in positions of authority over them. And so it is a sick, predatory behavior, and it doesn't matter if the victims are like, "Hey, let's do this." You know, I'm willing.
Yeah.
They're being taken advantage of by somebody who is very sick, and they don't need to be around children. And if they're going to act on those, because there's lots of people that have this sexual attraction to children that never act on it because morally they know that it's wrong. But for the ones that have taken that step and there is nothing that can ever satisfy them, and they will find more victims and more victims and more victims.
And they get away with it once, and it's like a blueprint then.
Yeah. There's another study that was done. Let me get to my notes. Same guy, Abel, he studied to see, like, does fantasizing about having sex with children increase your number of victims? And so 59% of the offenders in this study, and in a lot of his studies, he got immunity.
Let me make sure I ask this right here. You say when we word that, are we counting victims who are not physically touched as victims, or just like if you fantasized about it, is that a victim?
No. So,
like dreaming about, like cheating in your dream, is that the same as cheating? So this is actually physically
hands-on offenses.
Okay.
So in this study, and he got, let me back up and say, he got immunity for some of these guys so that they would tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth and not minimize. Because when you get an offender that pleads guilty, he's going to plead guilty to that one count of that one kid and minimize it and say, well, I didn't really have sex with her. She just fell on my penis.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's not going to talk about the 50 other victims that he has.
Right, hold that thought. We're about to come back from the break onto the radio. So we got this a little chopped up here, but I just didn't want to leave our online audience out to dry. Guys, thank y'all for bearing with me. Welcome back in to the Clay Edwards Show. Guys, we got about 40 seconds left before the top of the hour break. This conversation is just so intriguing that I was forced to run over a couple segments, and unfortunately we're having to take that time back from this last segment. So you're going to have 7 minutes of news and advertising. I implore that you not go anywhere. Just rip the knob off, enjoy these great sponsors and the news, and come back, and we'll have Hollie Jeffries here picking this story up. Online audience, we're going to continue answering your questions and replying to your comments during the break. The Guns and Gear text line is 769-241-1944. The phone line is 601-879-0002. See you in 7 minutes. All right, we're back.
Okay, so in this study, he's got all of these sex offenders, and these are offenders who have hands-on offenses. They have actually sexually molested or raped children. And so in 59% of the offenders, he's asking them, do you ever fantasize about having sex with children and sexually abusing children? And so in 59%, they say no. They've never visualized and had the fantasies. 59%, they had 8,700 victims collectively. Now, I don't have the number of offenders in this study, but just know that 59% of the offenders collectively had 8,700 victims, and they are saying that they don't fantasize. 41% of the offenders say, yes, we do fantasize. It's constantly in our mind, and we are fantasizing, molesting, and sexually abusing the children. 41%, a lower number of victims, had 66,500 victims from fantasizing. And so what this study is showing is that the ones who sit there and obsess over it and fantasize over it, they're going to have way more victims. So what does child sexual abuse material do? So for the audience that does not know what child sexual abuse material is, it's the new terminology for child pornography. Pornography has this connotation that it's consensual, and so we never want to say that a child is consensually wanting to do this. And so we want to call it what it is. It's child sexual abuse material. It is sexually explicit videos and photos and content made of children. And it could be made by the child and sent to somebody. It could be made by the perpetrator while they're abusing the child, or somebody videoing or filming what they're doing to the child. So 41% of offenders who had fantasies had 66,500 victims, compared to a higher number of offenders who only had 8,700 victims collectively. So child sexual abuse material, if you can get your hands on it and you can look at it, it's going to cause you to have those fantasies. Think about an adult looking at adult pornography. The more you watch it, the more you're going to want it. The more you're going to fantasize yourself being in that role, the more you're going to dream about it, the more you're going to consume more of that content and become addicted to that content. And at some point, you're going to go out there and you're going to start trying to find a way to have sex with somebody in the way that content portrays. And so that's what's happening with these offenders, is that child pornography is so rampant right now. There is so much content out there and it's so easily accessible that I think that it's increasing the number of hands-on offenders that we have out there. And then, of course, now because we have online access where you can exploit them and lure them and set up a meeting with them, adults, and all of the major problems that they have as adults.
Are they predators now too?
No, but they have severe mental illness, they have panic disorders, they have PTSD, and all of this was revealed during the original study, that they had all of these problems, but it was covered under the rug because the pedophile researcher couldn't publish that, yes, pedophilia and child sexual abuse harms children, because he wanted it to show that it didn't, because he had an agenda to get it legalized. And so I have done this for 24 years, and I can tell you that it absolutely harms people.
Oh, yeah.
Horribly
no doubt about it. Anybody that
people.
thinks it doesn't is bat crap crazy.
And let me go back to the preacher.
I should hold that thought. We're coming back from the break.
Okay.
Boom, shakalaka. We're back here on the Clay Edwards Show. It's hour 2 of the most incendiary show on the RADIO, and of course online too. We're streaming worldwide at Save JXN on Facebook, X, YouTube, and Rumble, and of course pumping across the airwaves all throughout Central Mississippi from a little freedom of speech First Amendment outpost here in Florida, Mississippi. That's 103.9 FM WYAB. In the studio this morning we have Hollie Jeffery, and we're discussing ways to target sexual predators, what to look out for, stuff of that nature. But before we get back into that real quick, this segment is going to be brought to you by our friends out at Guns and Gear. I can't think of a better sponsor to mention
Right.
to mention while we're talking about sexual predators. Our future effed around and found out champions out there rolling around amongst us. Look, swing by, see Hunter and the team. They're not open on Mondays, but get on everybody, get by there on Tuesday. But hey, you can always shop online, 365, 24/7 at gunsngear.co. They got you covered on all your new and pre-owned firearms. They have all the accessories. They're the home of No Limit Ammo. I'm not even sure if there's an ammo shortage, if that's still a thing, but if it is, they're the home of No Limit Ammo. And of course, they accept trade-ins. They'll buy your firearm from you without you having to buy anything else. If you have an estate sale, let them put a number on it for you. Maybe they'll make it worth your while just to sell them the entire allotment. And they can take care of all your gunsmithing and Cerakoting needs as well. And they've also got, I think they got bear spray, pepper spray, all that good stuff. I went by the other day and got a magnet to put my gun on, a gun magnet for the bottom of my dash or wherever I choose to put it. They got all that type stuff. And they also have a really great selection of knives, like really high-end pocket knives. I mean, I can't tell you how often I need a knife and I don't have one. So that may be one of my next gifts to myself, is a nice high-end pocket knife. They ain't cheap, but you know what? Cheap stuff ain't good. Good stuff ain't cheap. And they got you covered at Guns and Gear. And one more time, located at Highway 51 North in Gluckstadt, right there at Yandell Road, next to the new Boo's Smokehouse Barbecue, and located online worldwide at gunsandgear.co. All right, Hollie Jeffries, thank you for joining us this morning. This is a topic that never ceases to amaze and disgust me to all new levels every time we have it. And I think it's good to remind people. I've got people texting in and listening this morning that are just blown away and very appreciative that we're having this conversation. So what we did previously was we asked y'all to tell us what you thought a sexual predator may look like. And some of the questions, we'll start online on the the online chat. Let's see here. Chris says, black males, 20s to 40s, same school teachers, coaches, and preachers. But I think previously he had said maybe white males. Let me see here. Yeah, here we go. So, originally, Chris said mid-30s, 40s, white males, school teachers, preachers, and he basically went back and added also black males, kind of in that same leadership type position. Amy says there's no look. It could be anyone, family, church, school, any walk of life. Miss Sylvia says, unfortunately, it can look like anyone. Carrie says, coach of youth sports has no kids or spouse. You know, that's one I mentioned a while back too. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater there. There are some good, well-intended people. But another one for me is grown men who want to teach at elementary schools.
I have a friend that's in law enforcement, and he's like, every time one of those comes on the news, he's like, see, I told you. Like,
Let's take a call here real quick. Hopefully we're staying on topic real quick on the Mazda Jackson phone line. Hey, good morning. You're on there.
Yes, sir. This will be the script, by the way. My name is Nathan. Me and my partner, Bob Hansen, we're local website builders in Florida. We're just reaching out if you want to talk about possibly building.
No, I don't, man. You call the live studio line. Thank you. We're good on websites.
All right.
Hi. What was I saying before that? Oh, the school teacher.
Elementary school teachers.
Yeah, the male school teacher that wants to go to do elementary school. I think that just should be a big old red flag immediately. And let's just do a background check. How about that? Can we check their hard drives before we let them do it?
Hard drives, yeah.
Like same with the churches. I think churches are way too open. And I'm sure some churches actually do this because there's churches you don't have this problem at.
Right.
That do these background checks and don't just let anybody wander off on the streets, well-intentioned, be around children.
Well, and it's so much more than just a background check, and I'll get into that, especially when because I definitely want to talk about what happened in the Corinth School District recently with the superintendent up there and the teacher that got arrested for making AI.
Oh, the AI porn. Well, I want to do this real quick. Okay. So we've got what listeners think is the description.
Right.
What is the description?
Okay. So according to Abel is this researcher that, like we talked about before, he wanted to compare the different populations, the offender population against the regular normal population. So the regular normal population that he found, 73% of that, the normal population that was not offenders, 73% were married, 72% were white, and 49% had a higher education. Okay. In the offender population, the ones that confessed to being a sex offender or were arrested and convicted of being a sex offender, 77% of them were married. So see, they're blending in with the society. So it kind of goes against your original assumption that they're the single guys always, right? So 77% were married. That's what the U.S. population looked like in 2000 when this research was done.
That helps them get closer to other kids.
Helps them get closer to kids, helps them blend in with
society.
society.
Parties, families, school functions,
events. They want to live a normal life. And they may actually want to get married. A marriage relationship allows them to have adult sex with an adult person. And that goes on to other parts of the research that many of them are heterosexually married and very happy in their heterosexual marriage relationship. And they're not exclusively sexually attracted to just children. They actually have adult sexual attractions too, but they have this childless sex attraction and they follow on it. So they're blending in. 77% are married. 72% of the non-offending population was white. 79% of the offender population was white. 11% of the non-offender population was Hispanic. 9% of the offender population was Hispanic. So it's across racial lines. It's going with what the population in the U.S. was. So it's not saying that it's more white people necessarily because they're the worst sex offenders. It's going along with population lines.
Let me ask you a question. We may have brought this up last time. And this is just a feeling I have from living around Jackson and stuff. Do you feel like this goes wildly underreported in like urban black communities?
It goes wildly underreported in.
Because I've talked to some law enforcement friends who agree with me on this here in the area. They feel like it's wildly underreported because of stigma and for the same reasons it's underreported anywhere.
I think it's just wildly underreported in all populations, especially in poverty situations, but even within my own family. I was sexually abused when I was 7, and I didn't tell my mother until I was 11. And she was afraid that if I told that, the men in my family would kill this perpetrator because he was also in the family. And you know, there were other people.
Can I ask what was the resolution on that?
I never told.
Never told.
Because I loved my dad and I didn't want my dad to go to prison. And it's not because I was groomed by the offender. Now the offenders will groom you and tell you not to tell because they'll kill your parents or your dog or your sister, or the offender has built such a rapport and a relationship with you that you love the offender and you don't want the offender to go to jail.
Well, we all know the Gary Plaquet story. He's the godfather of the FAFO movement, as I call him. Yeah. He was was down in Baton Rouge in the 80s. The child's karate teacher had kidnapped and was grooming, and he's the one that killed him at the airport. There's that famous where he's on the payphone, turns around, shoots him.
I was thinking about that one this morning. So
on March 16th is the anniversary of it every year. So
my offender was a great uncle that was my grandmother's brother, and so you know my mom was afraid that my grandfather would and my uncles and my dad would all take matters into their own hands, which is very Southern culture here, that the men would protect their children.
It's a true fear, if that's what you want to call it.
But it was enough to keep me silent. Yeah. But going back to your original question, I have seen in the black community, but also in other communities, that we don't tell. We don't tell about sexual abuse. We don't tell about child abuse. We don't get in other people's business. We don't want to get involved because it's somebody else's business. And there are hundreds of thousands of children every year that continue to live in abusive situations because their family and their neighbors will not make a report because they don't want to get involved. But it happens in Jackson, it happens in Oxford, it happens on the coast, it happens in other states.
Fear of retribution and everything else.
Just fear, just all kinds of fears for sure. The other statistic that I wanted to talk about with Abel was the higher education. 46% of offenders have a master's or a college or master's degree, and 65% of them have a job. And so they're blending in. They look like me and you. They are fine, upstanding citizens. One of my friends that is a survivor of sex trafficking, her trafficker was a dentist, and he trafficked her to local politicians who then also trafficked her to different funding sources so that they could get campaign dollars and, things under the table. And so she was trafficked from the time she was 14 till the time she was 29 by very prominent white men in the community. This was not in Mississippi, but she was not pimped out by your local street pimp. It was all well-known men in the community that were elected politicians or doctors or attorneys that went to church and participated in community events. And she said, you can drive through my hometown and the dentist has a sign going into town with his name on it, and he's always donating money to all the children's charities and things like that. And so it's just they hide in plain sight. And Jeffrey Epstein, we know that all of his clients were very high profile people. So I'm looking forward to seeing that list and who comes out on that.
Me too. All right, let's stay on schedule this time around, this hour. We're going to take a break here. We have Hollie Jeffery in the studio. Hollie Jeffrey's in the studio. Is it Jeffrey or Jeffries?
Ery, no S.
Jeffrey. Thank
Jeffrey.
you. I apologize for getting that wrong there.
It's okay.
I spelled it right on the on my caption here, but just saying it wrong. All right, Hollie Jeffery here in the studio talking about sexual predators within the community and busting up some myths on Clay's stereotype of what they may exclusively look like. This is good information. Hope everybody's soaking it all in this morning. Continue to comment. Any questions you may have, if you want to call in with any questions for Hollie, the Mazda Jackson phone line is 601-879-0002. I got your Guns and Gear text loaded up, ready to look at some of those. That number is 769-241-1944. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back in to the Clay Edwards Show. This segment brought to you by our friends over at, how about my good friends at Burgers, Blues, Barbecue, all three great locations, Madison, downtown Brandon, and, of course, the newest location right there in front of Dogwood in Flowood, right on Lakeland Drive. Swing by, see them today for a great plate lunch at all three locations. They have a rotating meat as well as red beans and rice with sausage or hamburger steak available every day. Or look, man, you go to a burger joint, you get a dang burger. I mean, I've been swimming upstream for so long trying to eat all these other great things on their menu. And don't get me wrong, their Nashville hot wings are top 5, maybe top 2 best wings. Definitely most consistent best wings in the area. Love them. Try them if you haven't. They're smoked. I want some right now just talking about it. But, when you got burgers in the name, when it's Burgers, Blues, Barbecue, you get a dang burger. And I'm going to tell you what, that smash burger, that bacon jam smash burger at Burgers, Blues, Barbecue is worth its weight in gold. Just thank me later. Just get it. Thank me later. Get the fresh cut fries or the homemade onion rings with it, and you won't regret it. And don't forget, they can handle all of your catering needs as well with B3 Catering, well beyond Burgers, Blues, or Barbecue. If you can dream it, they can create it from 5 to 5,000 people. Heck, why don't you get breakfast delivered to your office one day this week? Again, thank me later. BurgersBlues.com for Burgers, Blues, Barbecue. Hollie Jeffery, let's take a phone call real quick, see if we can avoid a telemarketer this time on the Mazda Jackson phone line. Hey, good morning. You're on there.
Good morning, Clay. I'm not a telemarketer.
Thank you.
I first want to say thank you to Hollie for being there and educating everybody. This is a subject I'm passionate about because my niece was raped by a predator at college who was a fellow student.
I'm so sorry.
And so I know what techniques he used. My niece finally got justice this past year, watching him finally come to trial after getting caught as a teacher at a school for his crimes. And he's now in jail, and she was there to see him pronounced guilty and taken off to jail, and his sentencing too. But they start young. Mm-hmm. They don't just all of a sudden turn 30 and go, hey. So is there something, can you tell us sort of just some of their little subtle techniques they use? Because in my mind, my niece goes and she does some education things now on this subject, but to sorority houses and things. But I just wonder if there was something the parents could teach their children about this before they go off to college. In that way, they are actually protecting their children from these predators. Is there something you can discuss like that on the air to just prepare and help parents prepare to talk to their children about that?
Absolutely, and that's such a great question. And to go back to what you said about they start young, one of the research articles that I read said that they start somewhere between the ages of 10 and 20 in molesting their first victims. And so this sexual attraction and predatory behaviors start in their teenage years. And if they ever give into it, they're more likely to just continue to do it. So you're right. They don't wake up at age 30 and decide to do this. And we also discussed off air for our online audience a few minutes ago that if they ever start fantasizing having victims and start fantasizing having preying on children and having sex with children, their potential to have more victims just skyrockets if they are visually fantasizing about it. And so as far as grooming behaviors, one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to try to just build a good rapport with your child. One of the things that they do is they look for vulnerabilities in children. And so, think about as an adult, if you're sitting there watching a group of kids, 15 or 20 kids together, you can pick out the kids in the group that are shy. You can pick out the kids in the group that maybe have only come to that event with one parent. Just the kind child, they're not going to necessarily choose the outspoken child with high confidence. Usually, they're gonna pick a really good kid or a kid that's kind of on the outskirts, looking in. One of the things that I was telling Clay in the break was they're going to look for kids without fathers that don't have a father in the home. They're going to look for those girls in college, like your niece, who are just really good, but maybe not have great boundaries, and are not going to be the type to say, no, I don't want to do that. There's a lot of research that talks about young ladies that if they're not taught to be assertive and say, no, I don't want to do that, and instead would say, I'm really uncomfortable with this, or I'm just not sure. Well, that's not an assertive no. And so they're going to find those young women and continue to kind of pursue them and push their boundaries with them, because they know that those young women may not forcefully say no and tell them to stop. And unfortunately, when you go to trial, a defense attorney is going to tear that victim apart and say, well, you didn't say no. Mm-hmm. You said no, I'm not sure that I want to do this. Well, that's not a no. And so, they're going to look for those kids that, again, have some type of vulnerability that they can exploit. It may be an overweight child that has self-esteem issues. It might be that kid that doesn't have a father at home. It might be the kid that just maybe is in foster care and moves around a lot. It might be the kid on the baseball team that, is on the bench all the time, and he only gets to hit once or twice during the game, but he doesn't get to play outfield, and he's not the best player, he's not the fastest runner. So there was a pedophile that was an umpire, and so he said that he would always target those boys. He would also referee basketball games, so he would always target those boys who said on the low self-esteem. And so they would build a rapport with them and build a rapport with the parent to get access to these children where they're alone with them. And then they're going to, and it may take a couple of weeks to months of building this grooming where they might tell the kid a dirty joke, and then they'll apologize and say, I'm so sorry. Don't tell your mom that I told you that dirty joke. Or they may have a sexually explicit magazine like Playboy or something in their car. And it's laying there intentionally for the kid to see it. And they're like, oh my gosh, don't tell your mom that was in here. And so they're going to test to see if that child can keep a secret. They may give the child gifts. They may give the child lots of praise. They may let the child come over to their house and play video games.
Something that comes to my mind as you're saying that in a modern era beyond the magazine is maybe accidentally send them an inappropriate meme.
Right.
Or video or something.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to send you that. That was a joke. I was going to send that to somebody else.
Right.
Something like that. And I can speak on that because I did accidentally send my mom and daughter a really inappropriate meme one time before you could go in and delete sent text.
That was not for you.
Like,
that was
not for y'all. Not for y'all. And but I could see how somebody could use that.
Absolutely.
Speaking on what you're saying about testing to keep a secret or something.
Right. So they're going to, and we have so many now that are preying on children online. And so online safety is a huge thing. And what they're doing is they're getting in these gaming sites, and they're noticing the kids that are playing in the middle of the night when they should be on a school night. Mm-hmm. Or they're playing in the middle of the day when they should be at school. Well, that's a big green flag for a predator. It's like, okay, well, this kid's supposed to be at school, but for the last 3 weeks, he's on Roblox in the middle of the day or in the middle of the night. So that tells me that nobody's looking out for him. So they'll create fake profiles online and build a rapport and a relationship with them online, and then start sending them nude pictures and start asking for nude pictures.
And that's where the sextortion type stuff.
That's where the sextortion stuff is coming in. And this is an alarming research article that I read put out by Thorne. 1 in 6 children are creating their own child sexual abuse material and sending it to strangers online. And they're doing it to make money, to get drugs. They're being coerced, or they think that they're sharing it with somebody that's a peer, or they've built this rapport with somebody and somebody's asking them for it. And we're talking about kids as young as 6, 7, 8, 9 years old that are old enough to play these games and talk to these people through chat. And what they're doing online is they're getting them to come off of the gaming platform into a private chat app. And then that's where they're grooming them on that chat app to send pictures. And then the perpetrators will start sending them sexually explicit pictures and stuff and ask for those pictures in return. Once the predator then gets those pictures, then they can blackmail the children and tell the children, we know where you live, send us more pictures. We know who your mom is, send us more pictures. We're going to kill your dog, send us more pictures.
Yeah. I want to say this, circling back to your niece, and you asking her the advice, and just kind of what bouncing around in my head is, I would ask if she was comfortable talking about it, ask your niece how he was able to take advantage, groom her. What are some of the red flags that she, in hindsight, shouldn't have ignored, or what possibly, I hate to use the term worked, but for lack of a better term, what worked for it to happen to her? If she could tell other people what to look out for, and maybe we could get a clear, some clear advice on what to avoid, at least in that situation.
And I guarantee you that he presented himself as a wonderful guy, a nice guy, and was her friend, and had a great reputation. And
I never do this. I've never done this before.
And
you're the only one.
She is a wonderful young lady that is just maybe has poor boundaries and cannot forcefully say no, and he took advantage of that. And she was probably asking him at some point to stop, and he's going to put it back on her and say, well, you probably never.
Brother, look, man, great call, great question. Thank you for offering such a personal antidote there. And hopefully we got something there to help people work on. And we'll do this again with Hollie, but we got to take a break. Thank you for the call. We'll be right back on the Clay Edwards Show with Hollie Jeffery. Welcome back in to the Clay Edwards Show here with Hollie Jeffery on a Monday. If you guys tuned in to hear me rant and rave about the St. Paddy's Day Massacre, I did that the first 30 minutes of the show, and I'm sure I'll be back online doing that again today. That's the one thing about Jackson violence is it's forever low-hanging fruit, and we can forever talk about that every day. My best advice is keep your head on a swivel in Jackson. But what we are talking about this morning that is also an everyday threat that gets overlooked a lot because we trust the wrong people. Not necessarily trust the wrong people. The wrong people end up in positions of trust and power, and we blindly trust them. And they are inevitably end up being sex offenders and violators and rapists and all these other bad things in the Bible. And we've got Hollie Jeffery in here this morning discussing some of the things to look out for. We were going to do this in the last segment, but Hollie, let's do it now.
Okay.
The Corinth school, and this is just taking sexual predator and CP to a whole nother level where this guy took some 14, 15-year-old female students, I believe it's female, and he used AI with their images to make porn with them in it. Which, right. I mean, this is just next level. And what's really even more disturbing, well, no, that's extremely disturbing because he's the perpetrator of it. What's worse, I just keep going back to it, it's worse, is the school district knowing about it and basically covering it up. And then this guy being relieved of his duties and going and getting a job at CPS.
He was arrested at the CPS office is what the news stories have said.
I'm not surprised. I want to be. I want to be surprised. I'm not the least bit surprised.
But it's because everybody talks about doing background checks. Well, a background check is only going to show if you've been arrested and charged with something and or convicted.
Yeah.
So
I think we should be looking at people's hard. They should have voluntarily, at any given time, have to give up their hard drives. I think we should just be randomly sending people in, just like a random drug test. If you work for the state in a capacity where you're working for around kids in any form, fashion, or another, just don't be surprised if we're showing up and checking your hard drive, looking around, just random surprise. We're here.
Well, there's so many things you can do safety-wise, put in place. You can have cameras in place. You can have multiple adults in a room in place, multiple adults on a school bus in place.
You can have all of that. It wouldn't have prevented this.
No, and in this situation, too, you can have an open investigation on somebody, but if they've not been arrested, it's not going to show up on a background check. That's what people need to understand.
This is really a great example of a conversation I had with somebody the other day. And I don't even remember what the topic was, but my point was, it doesn't matter what laws you change, what you do. Bad people are going to find a way to do bad stuff.
Absolutely. And what I encourage law enforcement to do when I teach this out at the Law Enforcement Academy is when you're doing these investigations and you make an arrest, make sure you make that arrest public on all your Facebook pages, because if we go back to Abel's study and all these other studies, they have way more victims than this one.
Oh, yeah.
And so
the public shaming.
If you can get enough to make that initial arrest and you put it public, and most times other victims are going to come forward and tell their story as well. And so now you've got more credible witnesses coming forward against this one particular perpetrator. But going back to the Corinth School District, if I have teachers on listening, y'all are in school right now, so maybe you're going back and listening later, or somebody that's a teacher, they need to know this information that I'm fixing to tell you. Here's the problem with what happened in Corinth. So he makes this AI sexual abuse material of these students that were real victims. These were real kids that he went on their social media page, took their pictures off of social media, put it into AI, and created sexually explicit images. So the Corinth School District, great, has a monitoring system that picks up sexually explicit images. And so it sends an alert to an IT guy. IT guy gets the alert.
This happened on a work computer?
This has happened on a work computer.
I missed that part of the story.
Yes. Yeah. So this is yeah. So it happens on a work computer. IT guy goes to the computer, finds the videos and pictures, and he downloads a couple of them and takes it to the principal. The principal is like, holy crap, let me call the superintendent.
Because now they're all in possession of child porn.
Well, the school is in possession of child pornography. And so then the superintendent tells the principal to handle it and call the guy into the office. And this is all according to news articles. And the news article said that the principal calls the vice principal and the teacher that's being accused the next morning into the office. The teacher that's being accused admits that it's his material. They allow him to resign quietly the next day. Okay, so the first person to find the material is the IT guy. He tells it to the principal, then to the superintendent, then the vice principal. So we have 4 school employees who know about this material.
So it feels like the IT guy did what he felt was the right thing by notifying the chain of command.
He was probably going by school protocol. Mm-hmm. But let me be very clear to the people on the call or on the radio. School protocol is not state law. Okay? State law, specifically State Statute 97-5-51, mandatory reporting of sex crimes against minors. Okay? This was amended in 2024, but this came out around 2013, 2014. And it was after the Penn State scandal with Jerry Sandusky and Joe Paterno. If you think about that case, an assistant coach saw Jerry Sandusky raping a child. He goes to Joe. Joe goes to the president. Nobody reports it to law enforcement. It's swept under the rug. And for another 10 years, Jerry Sandusky is allowed to rape children. So we passed this law after that. And it specifically states that teachers and school employees and IT techs, like it says all these, it specifically names all these different school type employees along with law enforcement and social workers and all of that are mandatory reporters for any kind of child sexual abuse of someone under the age of 16, including child exploitation, which these pictures include. But it can be statutory rape where it's, they're under the age, maybe they're 13 and their boyfriend is 17 or something like that. But it lists all these different types of sexual abuse, whether it's a parent or somebody else. And then at the very bottom down here.
Mandatory reporting by who?
What do you mean?
You said that the law is mandatory reporting. Is that by people who are employed in capacity of school teachers or working at a school, working for the state, or is it mandatory reporting? If I see it, I'm going to report it. But
according to the statute,
John Q. Citizen's responsibility to snitch if he knows something going on. Is it against the law for him to know and not tell?
It says healthcare practitioner, clergy member, teaching or child care provider, law enforcement officer, or commercial image processor. And it goes into very detailed, and then it breaks each one of those down and says who they are.
I like it. Okay. That's what I was curious
That
about.
also talks about caretakers. Let's see. And then it goes down and it talks about if you fail to make a report, you're guilty of a misdemeanor and you can be arrested and fined. And then at the very bottom, it says you shall not delegate your responsibility of reporting to somebody else. So the problem with these school districts are their school policy says if you suspect abuse, then you report it to the counselor or you report it to the principal or you report up the chain of command, and then they
IT, principal, superintendent, and vice principal.
Yeah.
It's 4 total?
4 total.
So there's 4 people at minimum we confirm broke the law.
Confirmed broke the law.
Have they been charged?
They have not been charged. And so the superintendent in this situation never reported it to law enforcement. They just sent a report to MDE 3 months later saying that he had been terminated for ethical violations, or that he had resigned because of ethical violations. So the teacher was not even fired. He was allowed to resign. Nobody made the report to law enforcement, and then the report to MDE
remain in the community,
just allowed him to say that he did some type of ethical violation. It sat it on MDE's desk for a month before somebody really kind of looked at it. And when they looked at it, they're like, holy crap, he created child pornography and child sexual abuse material. So they're the ones that reported it to law enforcement. So nobody from the Corinth School District ever reported it to law enforcement.
Again, I want to act surprised, but I know exactly what it was. They were all looking at their heads on a swivel, or being put on a platter, should I say, if they had done it, because it all falls back on them for making the hire. And this is what they're thinking.
Right.
I think people really blow that out of proportion. They think, oh, no, this is going to make me look. It's going to make me look bad because it happened on my watch. That's what they're all covering. CYA, all covering their asses. But
I guarantee you, none of the teachers have ever been trained on Statute 97-5-51.
The IT director, I bet you he didn't intentionally. He thought he was doing the right thing.
He was following probably school protocol, but school protocol and state law are different.
He probably didn't know the state law.
Right.
I didn't. You just said we have a lot of laws in defense.
Right.
They make more. They never take any off the books. They always add more to it. But you would think something that egregious and that blatant, that should be posted at minimum and maybe it is in the staff lounge. Hey, see something, say something. It's the law.
Well, if you're a licensed social worker in the state of Mississippi, we have to have at least 1 hour of mandated reporting training every year. Yeah. And so I offer that training to social workers, and teachers can come as well. But I highly encourage if you're in a church, if you're employed by a church or any kind of child care facility, teachers, daycares, whatever, you need to know what the law says about mandated reporting, not just because there's 2. There's one that's the mandated reporting if the children are being abused and neglected by their parents. But this one is if this is a whole separate one, as if the child is being sexually abused, because children can be sexually abused by more than a parent. They can be sexually abused by anybody in the community. And so this one is specific to child sexual abuse of children under the age of 16.
All right, we got to take a break. We got Hollie Jeffery here. We're going to come back, land the plane. Internet audience, stay tuned real quick. We'll wrap it up with y'all during the break. Radio, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Yeah, they fired the superintendent, but they didn't fire any of the others, and none of them have been charged. I sent this because even law enforcement is not aware of this mandated reporting law.
Yeah.
And so I sent it to my friend who's one of the MBI Special Victims Unit investigators up there, Chaz Kennedy. And because I don't know any of the investigators in Corinth. And I said, Chaz, this is a mandated reporting law that they probably don't know about. I said, but every one of those people that did not report are guilty of this and need to be arrested. This happened in Calhoun County about 10 or 15 years ago, and law enforcement did arrest everybody. They arrested the coach that was accused of molesting the girl. Then they molested the teacher who knew and reported it to the principal. Then the principal reported it to the superintendent. So law enforcement arrested the teacher, the coach, the teacher, the principal, and the superintendent, and charged all of them with failing to make a report.
In Calhoun County? I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
The teacher got fired, the coach got fired, and then the superintendent, he was elected, so he couldn't get fired. He pulled the principal out and put him under the superintendent's office so that he couldn't get fired. But here's also the kicker in the case in Corinth and in Calhoun County. When you tell the principal to go ask the fucking perpetrator if he did this, you are interfering in a criminal investigation. And now you've just tipped this motherfucker off to go delete all the material that he has at home. Because now he's afraid you're fixing to report him. And so what they should have done is when the IT tech found it, they should have immediately called law enforcement and say, we have got some material on our computer. We think that it was this teacher that did it. Can y'all come investigate and put him on administrative leave? And he shouldn't know why he's on administrative leave until the investigation is complete. That way he can't go delete everything.
Yeah.
But when you interview a perpetrator or a child as a school administrator where there's been a sexual abuse allegation, you have just interfered with a criminal investigation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because they're going into cover your ass mode.
The principal in Calhoun County interviewed the girl and interviewed the coach and determined that the girl was not credible because she was a bully and a problem child. She had been in foster care.
It goes back to what you said early on about the targets that they look at,
and
vulnerable.
When law enforcement finally got involved several months later, they found text messages on the phones that confirmed what she was saying.
The stuff people put in text messages now, thinking that just because they delete it from their phone that it deletes, just mind-boggling to me. All right, online audience, thank y'all for tuning in today. Great show. We're going to wrap it up as soon as we come back from the commercial break. You got to hear a little uncensored, unedited stuff there with us, which I always think is the best stuff anyway. Anytime you can drop a good F-bomb, I'm good with it. There's a time and a place, and when we're talking about this kind of stuff, it's always the time and the place for it. Hollie, how can people online find you if they want to follow you and keep up with what you're doing?
The best way to find me is just on Facebook, Hollie Jeffery, Hollie, last name Jeffrey, Jeffery. I post a lot of content on there about predators.
And they can reach out to you with questions. We've had several questions that are so in-depth that we just don't have time to get to them on the text line and stuff.
They can email me at Hollie.Jeffery, lmsw@gmail.com, or they can send me a direct message on Facebook.
All right. Online audience, love you. I'll see y'all back tomorrow. Welcome back in to the Clay Edwards Show as we land the plane here for the next minute and a half or so with Hollie Jeffery. I want to, again, thank Hollie for coming on. We told the internet audience how they can follow Hollie before we closed out there, so I want to give her a chance to tell the radio audience as well. Hollie?
You can follow me on Facebook at Hollie Jeffery, Hollie, last name Jeffrey, Jeffery. I told Clay earlier that I'm in the process of opening a nonprofit. I've filed all the paperwork with IRS. Hopefully it'll be open in the next 3 or 4 months, where we can actually apply for some grant funding to go across the state to start educating communities and working with kids in the middle schools and teaching them about this and helping them have a voice to trust somebody to make an outcry.
Well, I want to do this again. I want to tell everybody. Like, I know a lot of people tuned in this morning because we were going to talk about the St. Paddy's Day stuff. That's kind of what we do here on the show. But I just thought this topic's way too important to kick the can down the road. And hopefully a lot of you guys learned something today that you might not would have otherwise learned. And maybe it's time to have a tough conversation with your daughters and teaching them to be more assertive in the way they say no is one of the biggest things Hollie has pushed this morning. And I know even with my older daughters, I'm still going to have that conversation with them today. Just don't be scared to say no. Hollie, thank you. See y'all tomorrow. Chip Matthews next.
Thank y'all.